Previously on Aaox.
No, oh god, no, not now. Stop foreshadowing. If I had to suggest a reason why this thing is worth playing more than any of the other entries into the genre, or indeed any of the far more complex, meaningful visual novels out there, my forthcoming Monster Girl Quest review sitting on the horizon like a tsunami, building in force and power until it destroys everything I've worked to build is any indication, I'm not done doing stupid things yet. Oh dear. Hello there, I'm Aaox, and for better, worse, and my sins, I find myself having placed myself of my own accord into reviewing one of the most debased Nukige I've ever even come close to having the dubious pleasure of knowing. But don't close this video yet, dear viewer, because just like being held in the loving embrace of a known murderer, there's a twist coming. Monster Girl Quest's one of those kinds of visual novels by Japanese indie dev studio Toro Resistance, not to be confused with Studio Ghibli's Totoro Resistance, the little-known dark second act of the groundbreaking My Neighbor Totoro franchise. And if you know what I meant by that extension of those earlier, then you're in the same hell I am. If you don't, then you probably shouldn't be watching this. Back when I first downloaded Monster Girl Quest in the autumn of 2013, before the release of Part 3, the intention was specifically to facilitate a joke review about it in the style of my Girlfriend is the President review. I was too frightened of the contents to proceed further than the second enemy encounter. That was 2 years ago. I now find myself having played through all 3 parts, and I don't know if the feeling of deep emotional upheaval inside of me is born of enlightenment or post-traumatic stress. Right off the bat, the game is not safe for work. Or outside of work. Really, I'm not sure where one might be safe playing this, perhaps in a maximum security vault lost to history somewhere in the Andes, but even then, I'd check for any listening devices. Just by downloading this, I'm sure I've firmly cemented my name on some sort of government watch list for deviancy. But I promised a review of the game, and with this season's Monster Musume wrapping up, now is apparently the time that public acceptance of Monster Girls has reached a new zenith, which is a window one should probably make absolute use of in an attempt to salvage as much credibility as I can from this endeavour. Also, it seems to be a rather well-liked game around these parts anyway, so here we are, standing before the gates of oblivion, looking death in the face, trying to refuse only to bite our tongues at the last moment, maligning our rejection into a malformed meh before tripping on our own feet and falling face first into a pile of garbage. But unlike what the first half of this review may have felt like, I'm not doing this for the sake of a joke. We're going in by the numbers, checking off the things that make this game work, because God only knows a fair evaluation is one of the few things that Monster Girl Quest hasn't received. As far as the gameplay goes, it's a rudimentary JRPG system that increases in complexity as you progress through the story, gaining new powers that counter different moves. The ways in which you can use your powers to counter, however, one really only tends to learn after the first loss with any specified Monster Girl, upon which you are greeted to a usually, and often fortunately, brief description of what the Monster Girl you were previously engaging in battle does to you upon loss. Oh yes, there's a reason why the game's subtitle is Lose and Be Raped, and it's not because the developer spends a lot of time with MLG no-scope compilation-style video editors, so yes, the combat is as luck-based as it is skill-based, if not more so. Like it or not, Toro wants you to lose. You're fighting them as much as you are the monsters. Barring that, it's more or less a kinetic novel that gives you the illusion of choice as much as it does any meaningful choices, barring one very special choice that has resulted in the conversion of many previously staunch anti-Monster Girl campaigners to completely change their perspective, being of course the decision to touch Fluffy Tail, a decision I also leaped at the first available opportunity. That said, I don't quite understand why it's become a rallying cry for those who've played Monster Girl Quest. One would think the sightless, hollow, 1,000-yard stares in the eyes of the veterans of these battlefields would be more than enough to reveal them as such. The soundtrack's nothing to write home about either, provided that you don't enjoy writing home to Mumsy to complain about bad music. There are a few good tracks here and there. This track dated to, but the grand majority are pretty poor, and whatever the music that accompanies the H scenes is meant to inspire, anything in the same realm as erotic or romantic is swiftly avoided as purposefully as possible. Wait, hang on, I've heard those dudes before. Hang on. No, it can't. Konami? Circa 1990. Is that you? Hideo? Hideo, are you? Oh, there you are. But honestly, 75% of the time you're not going to want to lose, and that is a generous percentile. I'd warrant nearly 90% of the girls in Monster Girl Quest are, if not hideous, at the very least not something I'd really want to even consider as physical relationship partners. The remaining 10% are probably drawn by Kenko Cross. And here's the great paradox to Monster Girl Quest, not to be confused with the still in development RPG Maker game, Monster Girl Quest Paradox. Monster Girl Quest is an age game. More than that, it's a Nuki game. It is a game expressly made for the purpose of being pornographic material for the reader/player to, let's call it, engage with. However, I'd argue the erotic element, barring very, very few scenes, primarily the ones featuring Alice and the rest of the girls drawn by aforementioned Monster Girl Grandmaster and progenitor Kenko Cross, whose girls are dramatically more attractive than basically every other artist's work in this game combined, are the game's biggest failing. The pornographic elements in this pornographic game are the single thing I genuinely dislike about it. They're the weak link, and I shall tell you why. For those of you who have played the game, you likely have an inkling as to where I'm going with this. For those of you who don't, brace yourselves. Monster Girl Quest has one of the most excellent stories I've ever really experienced in its element, perhaps even beyond that. I'm not joking. If you replace the erotic elements with more dramatic, honest, and engaging story beats, then Monster Girl Quest is a legitimately heartfelt story about a young warrior who dreams of peace and coexistence, and a woman whose entire plan is one of heartbreaking self-sacrifice brought about by the hand of the one she loves. I would say more, and I desperately want to. But in all honesty, I was moved by the story of Monster Girl Quest. Real, legitimate emotions were caused by the story of this game, caused by story beats that I would earnestly regret spoiling, and that is utterly bewildering. And this is the part I'd skip over in the joke review I was planning to do years ago, because it's not really funny. The game is rife with things perfect for poking fun at, but perhaps the most hilarious and tragic is how fantastic the story is. Just hearing this is probably causing some of you to go, "You're joking, right? I mean, it's a Nuki game. More than that, it's Monster Girl Quest." And that's completely tragic. So to briefly summarize, our hero of the hour is Luca, a young man, dangerously Shota, and as Shota as he is straight, whom has his heart set on becoming a hero, possible only by religious baptism. This baptism serves to make one a warrior of the goddess Ilias, whom decrees that all monsters must be killed as they present a threat to humanity. Luca disagrees, but he wants to become a hero in the chance that he might be able to change the way things are and create a world of coexistence between humans and monsters. On the way to his baptism, he encounters our heroine, Alice, and as a result of the disruption, is late for his baptism. Now robbed of the chance to be an actual hero, Luca sets off with Alice to see if he can't manage some good anyway. And they go on a whirlwind adventure that takes them across the world to meet new friends and foes, and it's good. It's good. Please believe me, it's really good. Were this game not a Nuki game, I could almost guarantee that it would be superbly received. Of course, I'd put no money behind so bold a wager, but that notwithstanding, there is as much to love about Monster Girl Quest as there is to hate about it, and there is a lot to hate about it. In fact, I'd actually argue that the pros outweigh the cons, but I'm not going to recommend that you play what is literally pornography, so, if you're not of age, just don't play this game. It's really for your own good. And being frank about it, ultimately, there are two kinds of people watching this anyway. Those who've played Monster Girl Quest and are here for a joke, and those who probably should not play Monster Girl Quest in the first place. But I really genuinely mean this when I say that I think this game has foundations and stories strong enough to make Atlas worry about job security. The characters are as flawed as they are charming. They actually have motivation and backstory. The antagonists have genuine malice and seem markedly evil, even frightening. There's political intrigue. There's also what is perhaps one of the most touching, burgeoning romances I've seen in, well, perhaps even in any game, and yet it's Monster Girl Quest. It's Monster Girl Quest. This is my eternal punishment. It's the weight all of us who've played this damned game have to carry with us. We've played a game with heartfelt emotion, with a legitimately engaging narrative, with adventure and friendship and love, and just, it's Monster Girl Quest. A lot of people crack jokes about this game, and fittingly. It's a messed up, horrible, reverse rape on loss game. It's not for the faint of heart, and I would wager that some of the stuff on display here isn't for the strong of heart either. In fact, I don't really know who this game is for, but if they'd just made an actual honest-to-goodness game instead of this mediocre to disturbing H visual novel, then they might have made something for everyone. Instead, we've got a game that is, despite itself, surprisingly, well crafted. It is surprisingly emotional. It is surprisingly good. And that's, well, surprisingly sad.